What's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel and to another Outriders video. A couple of days ago I released a firepower twisted rounds trickster build, and ever since then in the streams and in the comments of videos I've been getting questions about whether I'd be posting an updated AP build for the trickster as well. And that is what we're going to be looking at today, and I do urge you to go get yourself a bib because this is a juicy one. But if you've enjoyed the video or you find it useful in any way, please do consider giving it a like, subscribing to the channel, maybe sharing the video with a buddy. It really does help the channel grow and it just means a whole lot to me. But without any further ado, let's jump right in.
Discretion is advised.
Everybody, yeah, rock your body, yeah, everybody, rock your body, right? Backstreet's back, all right. Oh Jesus, why? What's happening? What's happening to us? Why is my spine outside my body? Oh my God. I do have to apologize that you had to endure that, but that really was the most effective way for me to show the raw power that this build can push out. And it is really impressive the amount of damage that you can offload onto elites or enemies or groups of enemies while still being very agile and tactile and moving around the battlefield. Now, firstly, I do want to actually give a shout out to one of the commenters on my video, Mateus Medeiros. I do hope I'm pronouncing your name right. If not, my apologies. But he posted a comment under the Trespasser Trickster build, which I built, which was the firepower build, basically mentioning that the AP build Trickster also benefits a lot from Time Rift. Of course, that build that I had made at that time used Time Rift and the AP stacking and a little bit of pain mod. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but I do want to give a thanks to Mateus, because quite often when I read the comments of the videos, which by the way, thank you so much for all the great feedback and everything that I'm getting in the videos, it's much appreciated. I sit and read each and every one of them, it means the world to me, so thank you so much. But I quite often get sort of like lost down a rabbit hole when I read these, because I will have had an idea for a build already have my mods picked out, have them farmed out, and then go, maybe I should change this around, maybe I should swap this in. And in this case I was super happy that I did that, because this works insanely well with Time Rift now. Even though before, you know, you would have used something like Venator's knife or so on, the benefit that you have with Time Rift right now is that all of the mods that you can stack onto it make it an extremely lethal skill, and that combined with the knife that you're already using in this AP build, it just really accentuates the damage that you can push out, and it is hella impressive, plus a hell of a lot of fun to play. At first glance it does seem that you're quite fragile with this build and that it is kind of glass cannony, but when we go through the mods and also in the footage that you're seeing in the background here, don't let it fool you that it seems that I go into the red line a lot. There's a lot of nuance to playing this, and again, Trickster in my opinion is one of the more difficult classes to master due to the way of how you have to dart in and out of combat, because the Trickster is its most effective in close range, but of course that's also where you take the most damage. The mods that we have stacked on here, however, do allow you to heal up quite quickly, and of course how the Trickster's healing mechanic works is that when you kill stuff, you not only get life back, but you also do get shield. So it really does afford this high risk playstyle where you're putting yourself in, you know, front of danger and trying to get as much damage down as possible before darting out of combat or throwing a Time Rift and using that time to just back off a little bit and heal a bit. Now, the build does play a little bit different whether you're playing solo or whether you're playing in a group, mainly because of the fact that when you're playing solo, you of course pulling all of the aggro and everything comes towards you, and depending on whether you're playing against human enemies or monsters, that can be either a good thing or a bad thing. I tend to enjoy the fact that playing solo against monsters with this build, because you know the monsters are coming at you and your skills are perfectly suited for things trying to chase you down. Whereas this build does not do so well with a lot of enemies picking you off at a distance and you having to sort of close the distance to try and deal as much damage to them. However, this is offset by, you know, playing in a team setup or a co-op environment, because then some of the other players will actually pull the aggro. Again, there's no aggro tables in this game, but they will take some of the heat off you, and that'll actually allow you to be this space ninja that you really want to be with this build. So let's go ahead and look at skills first before we look at the gear, because this will help you understand the choice for certain mods that we took. Of course, we are using Temporal Blade. This is one of the main ways of dealing damage with this build. We're also using Time Rift, which is one of your main interrupt and CC abilities, but also a massive damage hose with this build. And then last but not least, we're using Hunt to Prey to also debuff enemies, but also to move around the map and essentially get behind guys that are trying to deal a lot of damage to you. This is one of the staples of Trickster, and honestly one of my favorite abilities, arguably, when it does work, though sometimes it has some wonky behavior and you might end up not being able to jump in behind something or land looking in the other direction. This unfortunately does happen. It's a lot better than it used to be, but it is what it is. You'll also notice that we have extremely low cooldowns on here, and again, our gear will explain this better, but it is important to have your cooldowns as low as possible, because even though our weapons do deal some damage, quite a bit actually, the main damage is coming from the cycling of these two abilities, Temporal Blade and Time Rift, and so you want them to be as low as possible so you can push out as high as much, damage. When we get to the actual weapons, there's really two options that I've been messing around with. Both work equally well, and in the footage that you saw before, I was actually using the Death Shield. So on the Death Shield, of course, I've got Fortress and Shadow Combat. This is kind of like my go-to whenever I play an AP based character. So it doesn't matter if I'm doing Pyro or this or an AP based Technomancer or anything like that. I do still like the ramp up mechanic of Fortress and the additional survivability that you get from it. The arm and the resistance stacking from shooting does help you a lot with resisting some of the damage that you can get, since this build can seem a little bit fragile and not as tanky as something else that you might be used to. However, what helps in terms of raw damage and also being able to deal with lots of small little enemies is something like a Funeral Pyre with Shadow Comet and Claymore Torrent on. The reason why we put these on here, and also why Shadow Comet is on the Death Shield, is that when you hip fire with these shotguns, each pellet from the shotgun can actually call down these projectiles. So it's quite often that when you hip fire a bunch of bullets into a crowd of enemies, then you'll pull down multiple Shadow Comets and multiple Claymore Torrents. And there is a slight debuff mechanic also happening here with some of our skills. So after you jump in, dump your skills and stuff, and they're still not dead, if you just sort of back out and just open up with the shotgun, then you're mostly going to kill everything outright. Or you could open up with this before jumping in and using your abilities. Last but not least, you can also Time Rift, and our Time Rift shares the damage between all of the enemies, so you can dump all of this on one cluster of enemies and it'll kill all the stuff in the back that was also hit by the Time Rift. When we get to the actual armor pieces, I am using 3-piece Edge of Time on here because I want the temporal blades that we use to hit as hard as possible. Trespasser could work here because of the fact that it empowers your damage based on use of deception skills. In this case, we're using Time Rift, so that's a deception skill. But I felt like the Edge of Time set fit better here because I wanted the temporal blades to also shine. So however, the set does also empower Cyclone Slice, but of course we're not using Cyclone Slice in this particular build. Now, what we're looking for in terms of substats is we obviously want anomaly power, we definitely want cooldown reduction, and then we kind of want skills life leech because we want to be able to get as much life back as possible. Status is not so important for this build due to the fact that we aren't really imposing any status effects on anything that needs to tick longer or tick for, higher damage. So definitely skills life leech is what you want on here. However, if you're forced to choose between not having a piece and taking something that's got anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and status power on, that's also fine. So in any case, as I've said, we're using the 3 pieces of the Edge of Time, and so we're also going to need 2 purple pieces, and on those ones again you'll see I'm stacking anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and skills life leech. Here you can see my gloves is actually exactly like I said right now, so I don't have skills life leech on there, but it was just too good to pass up because it had the mod that I was looking for. So nonetheless, starting off at the top, we have double slice. This says that you can damage enemies are additionally cut with an anomaly slice dealing 50% damage. So when you hit with a temporal blade, there's a second, you know, sort of tick that goes off that deals 50% of the first slice's damage as well, which is huge because again, your temporal blade slices hits for really hard. And also we have access to 2 of them with this build, so you can dump quite a bit of damage on a whole bunch of enemies. And of course we know that temporal blades, like the arc that it slices at is quite wide, so you can often catch a whole bunch of enemies if you maneuver them nicely into a group together with the slice. One last thing is that temporal blade also disables those enemies for the time that they're in that slice animation, so it's also a fantastic way to CC and to get damage off you as well. We're using time crack on here, which says that enemies affected by the skill, this is now time rift, they have their armor and resistance decreased by 35%. This is huge because this makes them a lot softer, and it makes, you know, for instance, shots from your gun, pulling shadow comets and claymores onto them deal a lot more damage. But it also means that in a team play situation or a co-op situation, you're also debuffing these mobs for your co-outriders, so they'll be able to deal more damage to them as well. When we go over to the chest piece here, we have cut loose. This reduces the temporal blade cooldown by 20%, which is pretty good. You want to have temporal blade up almost all the time. It is a great way to deal damage. It's also a way for us to tank you know, damage and stack damage mitigation, which I'll show to you just now when we get down to some of the lower mods. But just in essence, you want to have as many temporal blades as you can, so that's why we have that on there. I have a little bit of pain on here, which is coincidentally the mod that was referenced by that comment in the video that I showed you earlier. This says that when you use this skill, it deals 610,000 damage over 6 seconds to affected targets. So this is kind of like a dot that ticks down, tick, 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 and then that deals damage to them. But the point is, this gets done to everything. So if you hit 20 enemies with a time rift, all 20 of them get this dot on them. And this outright kills almost everything with just one time rift, especially if it's powered up or ramped up by any kind of additional AP damage. So quite often when you hit anything except captains and elites with this, you can hit them with the time rift and you can just keep on running by because they're gonna die to this effect. When we look at the pants, we have Captain Hunter on here. This build has no problem whatsoever with dealing with trash, so we just need to stack up the ability to take elites and captains down just as fast, and this helps us with that. Strong Slice increases the base damage of temporal blade by a flat amount, almost 100k, so that's also good. When we go over to the gloves, we have Slasher on here. This is what gives us our second temporal blade, so I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Long range is on here so that we can get a much longer distance covering time rift. By default, it is actually quite short, and this triples the range, which is huge. So often you can sort of position yourself in a way that you can hit a whole bunch of enemies that are busy running at you. And that's why I said why this build is so fun to play against monster maps, because in monster maps they all tend to run at you in like a row, and that's basically the best use of time rift that you can put out there. Last but not least, on the boots, we have the one and only damage mitigation ability, or rather mod, in this setup, and that's temporal armor. This says that it boosts your armor by 50% for each affected enemy. This lasts 8 seconds and it can stack up to 8 times. So the point is that when you hit one temporal blade, let's say for argument's sake you hit 4 enemies, and so that gives you 200% additional armor, right? And then just shortly after that you hit like another 3 with your second slice. That's going to stack onto this and you're going to have all of that additional armor. Now, does that make you impossible to kill? No, not at all, because there is diminished returns when armor stacks up to a certain point, and really the most you can look at is something around between 75 and 78% damage mitigation. So it definitely doesn't make you invulnerable, but it absolutely helps. And again, this is armor, so it helps with physical damage reduction, so it doesn't really help with anomaly damage that you're getting. But the point is, if you're in the mix, you're right up and close and things are trying to melee you and hit you and stuff, this will help you deal with a lot of that damage. Last but not least, we have Pain Transfer on here, which is another epic mod for the time rift skill. This says that 20% of weapon damage and 30% of anomaly damage dealt to one affected enemy will be transferred to another affected enemy. Again, this means that if you hit 8 enemies, then whatever you do to one enemy is shared 30% on the rest of them as well. So usually a strategy here is to, and again, this is not just for you, it's for other people that are also trying to deal damage to them. So An effective strategy here is to essentially hit a whole bunch of enemies and then dump your damage onto one of them, and then have that, you know, be shared out through the rest. So this is, as I've said, through creative use of Time Rift and stacking all of these really powerful mods onto Time Rift, it makes Time Rift not only a fantastic CC ability, but it's also a great debuff ability. And with this damage over time, it's just a flat out great damage ability as well. Now, last but not least, let's go on over to the class tree. Again, we're building AP, so generally every class, if you go AP, you go bottom tree. So we're just going to go ahead and try and pick up as many of the damage, the anomaly increase nodes rather, as we can. We are looking to pick up cooldown ones as well as we go along, and resistance piercing is also quite handy, and we'll understand why that is just now. But the first major node we're picking up is activating your deception skills increases anomaly power by 50%. This is huge. So in other words, as soon as you Time Rift, your anomaly jumps up to, you know, 50% more. Now the point is, you kind of usually want to open up with Time Rift first and then start using your slices, because your first slice after the Time Rift is going to deal quite a bit of more damage, but your second slice is really where it's going to start ramping up. So then the next one we want to pick up is Combat Shields Timeline. This says that whenever you activate a movement skill, it increases your anomaly power as well. So we have two ways to ramp up our damage here, right? We can Time Rift to get the 50% increase, and that increase lasts for 10 seconds. And we can also Hunt the Prey to increase by 50%. This means also that if you do both of those within a 10 seconds period, you enjoy 100% additional anomaly power. And it's quite common for this build to go to 300, 400, 500 AP, you know, based on the stacking that you're doing with this. Now, we're also going to go over here to Anomalic Acceleration, which says when your damage skill ends, increase your anomaly power by 50% for 10 seconds as well. Again, what this means is, if you're using your temporal blade, remember we have access to two. So if you use the one, it's sometimes smarter for you to just wait a little bit for that one's effect to trigger and go off and do its damage before you hit the second one. Because if you do that, you're going to enjoy this 50% of additional damage as well from this. So don't hit both slices in a row immediately, but rather let them stack on top of one another. So hit one slice, let its damage resolve, if however you want to put it, and then hit them with the second one, and you're going to get a much bigger, much more girthier slice. We also do want to pick up Leap of Clincher, which I've always thought is a ridiculous sounding, you know, name. But anyway, this says activating your movement skills increases your resistance piercing by 25%. So by default here, you can see that we are stacking a lot of resistance piercing on here. And this is really good because if you're constantly reapplying things like Time Rift, for instance, then certain mobs that are able to survive that are going to start building up a resistance, and it might not actually pick them up off the ground. Or it might not actually do as much damage as it did before, and this will actually just help you pierce those resistances. Scion of the Void is where at the end of a damage skill, it increases your armor piercing by 30% and your resistance piercing by 25%. So again, more resistance piercing that we have on here. This again makes your slashes, your temporal slashes, deal a lot more damage because you're able to cut through resistances. This also makes your Time Rift potentially pierce a resistance that it's not able to get through, and this is of course procced after you use temporal blade. So as you can see here, but I keep reminding myself now that it's temporal blade and not temporal slash. For some reason I want to call it that. Last but not least, and I'm going to explain why I don't pick up shielded readiness here. So firstly, Altered Executioner says that for each enemy in close range, your anomaly power is increased by 6%. So again, this is this high risk playstyle of the Trickster, and you want to be in the mix and you want to have as many enemies around you as possible, because that's just going to make your anomaly power jump through the roof. Now, this also says that your firepower is increased by 15% of your anomaly power, and the reason why I rather take that than shielded readiness for us to get to the last node here is what shielded readiness does is it disables the healing that you get from killing something in close range. So now, instead of getting health and shield when you kill something, you only get shield, but you get more shield. I think that that is inferior to actually getting both, because the point is you can run into a situation where you get like a full shield bar And then the point is, you've taken damage in your body as well before the shield was applied, and so that damage has now not healed. And if you take a big hit, you're gonna have far too little life to survive a second hit. Whereas if you get both of them to go up at the same time, then even if your shield gets taken down, there's still relatively almost like a full life bar that also needs to be gotten through. And in that time, you can again deal more damage and get some shield back. So it just makes a lot more sense. And I've definitely noticed that when I used shielded readiness, I was actually dying a lot more to like situations of taking like two or three big hits in a row, or being CC'd and then taking like a big hit. That's it for the build, guys. Let me know in the comments down below how you've built your AP Trickster, if you've built something similar to this, how you're finding playing with it, and if it's impressed you as much as it's impressed me. Do keep a lookout for the Discord channel as well in the description of this video. Go ahead and join that if you're looking to join a community of players that play Outriders together, help with carries. We have carry events. I stream exclusively Outriders on Thursday nights, where I do help community members or anybody that joins the stream for that matter with any CT content, or we just have some beers, we hang out and we play the game together. But either which way, I want to thank you for watching the video, especially if you made it this far. It's just super important to me that you have a great morning, a great afternoon, and a super awesome evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me.